I woke up with a mouthful of pine needles and the kind of headache you get when your past decides to leave town without you. No purse, no glasses, no car. My phone was a spiderweb of glass and absolutely useless, like a drunk cousin at a moving day. The sun was sliding through Douglas firs, making pretty patterns I didn't ask for. I knew my name, but not the immediate chapter before. I knew I was 60 and had a mortgage and knees that complain in the rain. I knew pain. I did not know why there was a fresh bump on my head or how I'd gotten to the kind of forest that eats sound. I started walking because, even without a plan, I've always been good at forward. I talked out loud to keep panic from swallowing me, told myself boring, practical things. My social security number, the color of my living room, sage, the smell of my coffee, dark roast, Jeep. When I stumbled into a clearing and saw a green truck with a crest on the door and a woman in a brimmed hat checking a trail camera, I could have hugged her boots. "Whoa, ma'am," the ranger said, hands up like I was a deer learning how doors worked. "You look like you met gravity." "Gravity and I are on a first-name basis," I said, and my voice came out older than I felt. "I don't know how I got here." She got my name, the date, where I thought I lived, outside Bend, Oregon, cedar-sided ranch that always smells faintly like Murphy oil because that's the hill I'll die on. She looked at my cracked phone, whistled low, and called it in. Another ranger showed up with a first aid kit that had better manners than my adopted son. While Jess, Ranger Jessica, but she said to call her Jess, cleaned the blood at my hairline, I tried to remember the last normal day. My brain kept sliding off it. Jess took me to the tiny ranger station where the coffee tasted like burned dirt and salvation. "You've probably got a concussion," she said, eyes scanning my face like a map of a place she didn't want to get lost in. "We'll get you checked at the clinic in town." I nodded, and then, like a thought halfway to the surface, the words slipped out. "My son." "Okay," she said carefully. "I have a son, adopted, Evan. He's 30. He'll know what's going on." It was muscle memory, that assumption. Mothers think like that, even when the facts haven't earned the loyalty. I asked to use the station landline. I couldn't remember his number. Who remembers numbers anymore? But my bank's 1-800 stuck to my brain like gum. I figured I'd cancel cards just in case because I'm the kind of woman who brings duct tape to weddings. While I waited on hold through 18 choruses of "Your call is important to us," Jess sat across from me watching like she learned to never take first answers. When a human voice finally came on, I used a tone the bank must train their reps to fear. The low, even one that says, "I pay my bills on time, and I will haunt you if I need to." I asked for recent activity. I listened. I felt my stomach go cold. There had been large cash withdrawals that morning, my debit card used at a gas station near my house, and, bless America, a Facebook Pay transfer labeled "Estate Sale Deposit." I felt something clear snap into place, eerie like a lake freezing. "Jess," I said, too calm, "someone is selling my furniture." She blinked, then turned to her partner. "Get the county on the line." Back at the clinic, a PA shined a pen light in my eyes and said words like mild concussion, rest, and observation. I said words like later, no thank you, and I need to be at my house. Jess drove me, she insisted. Somewhere between the ranger station and my driveway, memory returned like a stack of Polaroids dumped on my lap. Evan had shown up that morning with his girlfriend Kira, who has eyelashes like a small ecosystem, and a voice permanently tuned to condescension. He'd asked me if I wanted to come see a great deal on a used lawnmower he found on Craigslist. He'd use that eager boy voice he used to use at 6 years old. The one he learned gets me to say yes. I remember getting into his truck, fussing at him about the state of his registration sticker, because I am who I am. I remember air that smelled like wet earth, and then a sharp pain at the base of my skull as I turned to ask, why we pulled off the main road. My phone in his hand. "Oh no, Ma, you dropped it!" Which is not how glass gets pulverized. Walking the rest was a blank until the trees. Now I looked at my own house and saw a U-Haul in the drive, strangers' SUVs parked along the ditch like mushroom gatherers, my front door was propped open with the boot scraper, and my dining room, visible through the open space, was full of people pine through my life. Just put her hand on my arm. "Stay in the truck." She radioed and went in. Moments later, a deputy cruiser pulled up and a man in tan knocked my mailbox a little crooked with his bumper and didn't apologize. I wanted to cry from the normalcy of small-town law enforcement. If you're waiting for a cinematic brawl, you're going to be disappointed. That's not my style. I sat very still in Jess's truck watching my son. He was in my kitchen with his hat turned backward the way he does when he thinks he's hustling. He had my wedding china for my first marriage, blue and white, lilacs around the lip, set up like a garage sale. I watched him take cash from a woman with a baby backpack. I watched him slap a masking tape "sold" on the corner of my antique cedar blanket chest, the one my mother gave me before she forgot my name. My adopted son, who I had driven to speech therapy and soccer and juvenile court when he stole his first bike, was selling my life by the pound. Jess spoke to the deputy. The deputy spoke to Evan, who laughed and gestured at the house like a game show host. "My mom's moving into assisted living," I saw him mouth, and the room laughed with him, because who doesn't love a good deal? Somewhere under the concussion, I felt heat, the kind that burns clean. And then there was an odd little pause, a rearrangement of space, and my son's wrists were pulled behind him and clicked. The crowd murmured, people tried to look like they weren't enjoying it, and I sat there thinking about the last time I held Evan's hand. He craned his neck to look for me. He didn't know where I was, he didn't know if I was alive. He also didn't look surprised by the cuffs. That told me everything I needed to know about our history and our future. The deputy put Evan in the back of the cruiser while the other one started shooing people out. It didn't take long. Few things clear a room like the word felony. By the time the house was empty of strangers, I could stand without swaying. My furniture wasn't all gone, moved and labeled, sure, but still mine. The cedar chest was halfway down my front steps, a karmic hazard. My checkbook lay open on the hall table with 3 carbon copies missing. There were boxes labeled with the efficiency of someone who grew up watching me inventory pantry shelves. Office, linens, garage, tools. I walked into my living room and saw the piece of paper I'd been trying not to imagine. It was on my coffee table under a paperweight shaped like a trout. Durable power of attorney. They'd printed it. They'd flagged the signature line with a cheerful yellow post-it. The date blank. My name pre-filled, like a tombstone. Enough. Now it was my turn. I am not fragile. I am 60, which means I have been underestimated professionally, socially, medically, and at the DMV, and I have survived all of it with a filing system. I am a retired school secretary who can break a fire code violation with a sigh. I know how to make 3 calls in the right order so that the 4th person assumes 18 people are already watching. I have laminated things purely out of irritation. I did not raise Evan to become a criminal. But I also did not raise him at all for the first 6 years of his life, and those matter too. Love is not a magic eraser. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. I started with the obvious: credit freeze, bank alerts, a call to the county recorder to ask if any funny business had been attempted with my deed. The clerk, bless her, said, "We can put a fraud alert on the property file, ma'am." I said, "Please, put a siren on it." APS, Adult Protective Services, picked up on the second ring like they'd been waiting for me. My son abandoned me in the woods after attempting to stage an estate sale of my property. He prepared a power of attorney I did not sign. I have a concussion. I am not incompetent, I said in that slow, focused way you talk when you want the transcript to pop on a judge's desk. The woman on the other end said, "I'm so sorry, and I hear you." And then she started asking good questions. In the kitchen, Jess took photos of everything. The deputy did too.
They bagged the blank POA like it was a venomous snake, which it was. They photographed the masking tape sold tags on the corner of my antique cedar blanket chest, the one my mother gave me before she forgot my name. My adopted son, who I had driven to speech therapy and soccer and juvenile court when he stole his first bike, was selling my life by the pound. At the ER that evening, because they did insist, and they were right, I let the doctor order a CT scan to rule out anything catastrophic. Nothing bleeding in my brain, but old familiar anger. The nurse's name was Sharon, and she told me her brother did the same to their mother, and that she kept a spreadsheet now because the only way to stay sane was to treat family like math. I liked her. She taped a little cotton square in my elbow sternly, the way my friend Martha tapes labels to jam jars.
Back home, the house was quiet, except for the click of my swallow clock. The deputy had left with Evan, and I had a card with a case number and a name. Elder abuse, he had said carefully, like he was trying not to make my face flinch. Theft by deception. Abandonment. Words that live better on paper than in a home. I walked room to room, writing small indignities, the way he'd left a drawer open as if ready to confess, the picture frames packed with our faces staring up like we were condemned already. In my office, my metal lockbox was open. The will was still there, untouched, but my passport was in the wrong spot, like someone had picked it up and put it down with the mild nervousness of a thief not practiced in bedside drawers. In the bottom of the box, where the emergency cash used to be, there was only a sticky note. I-O-U. His handwriting. He'd always looped his Y's too high, like they were trying to float away from responsibility. I slept with my room key wedged into the door like a hotel chain latch, a habit I hadn't pulled out since I lived alone at 22 in a studio above a mechanic shop where men shouted all day, and I learned to love the sound of my own percolator, like it was a guard dog. Morning brought clarity and ugliness in equal measure. Kira had posted on Facebook, because criminals rarely resist bragging, estate sale deals, designer furniture, mid-century, antiques must go. She'd written with 6 emojis and 2 pictures, my rugs rolled, my couch bare, my rugs again, as if repetition made them more hers. She had tagged the location, my address. Half the town had messaged her. Half the town was about to learn the difference between a sale and a felony. I took screenshots of everything. Messages, comments, even the ones from people I liked, because humans can be gullible in both directions. One woman from church had written, "So sorry your mom has to move so fast," with a heart, and I saved that too, for court, for myself, for the moment I would need to reread it and remember that people are complicated, and that generosity of assumption can be a weapon if you're not careful. Then I did what I do best. I made a plan so tedious it could ruin a devil's day. First, legal representation. I called an elder law attorney in Bend, a woman named Leela, who had a voice like a librarian's and an instinct for when to let a client cry. I didn't, not yet. "We'll file for a restraining order," she said. "We'll contest any POA attempts and notify the recorder and title companies. We'll move to protect your assets in person." She sent me a list that read like a war packing list. Bank statements, utility bills, insurance policies, deed, car titles, passwords, my memory. I gathered everything except the last, which kept sloshing around uselessly and then settling. Second, the paper trail. I pulled 10 years of bank statements from my file drawer and started marking anything that smelled like Evan's particular brand of emergency. He always claimed emergencies. Gas money to Salem, rent due yesterday, a friend 911 you don't know. There were patterns that looked like a plaid I should have seen earlier. In the last 6 months, more cash withdrawals than I remembered making. Always just under the branch manager's "we should ask questions" threshold. I printed texts I could recover off my laptop backups, which was more than I expected. Bless CloudSync, the nosy angel. Third, the locks. A locksmith named Troy came that afternoon, laces dragging, tool bag that looked like it had seen the inside of more heartbreak than mine. He changed out every cylinder. I had him add a new deadbolt to the back door, the one Evan used to leave ajar when he snuck out as a teenager. "You want a keypad?" Troy asked. "No," I said. "I want metal." Fourth, surveillance. I bought 2 more cameras and put one on the side gate and one in the driveway. Inside, I moved my little nanny cam, the one I bought to watch my dog when I travel, to the hall, pointed at the office door. It felt paranoid, which I dislike, but not as much as I dislike surprise. Fifth, my body. Bruises bloom like accusations when you're 60. I photographed the bump on my head every day, the way my doctor advised. I wrote down every ache. I made myself eat. I put water in a pitcher on the counter so I could watch it go down and know I was doing something human. I set timers. They kept going off like I'd rigged a house with mercy. The sheriff's office called. "He's been booked," the deputy said. "The charges are theft in the first degree, attempted fraud, and elder abuse. He made some statements we think you should hear." I did not go that day. The adrenaline had run out, and I was not going to meet my past in a room that smelled like bleach.
Instead, I went to my living room and lay on the rug, face up, and looked at the ceiling like it was a prayer. I listened to the swallow clock. I remembered the first time I saw Evan. 6 years old, with eyes like closed rooms, and the way he'd put his head against my shoulder and pretended not to notice he'd done it. He'd learned to survive before he'd learned to ask. That's the problem with the word adopted. People think it's a magic spell. It's not. It's paperwork and devotion and a long, stubborn reshaping of a life that began without you. It's love plus receipts. By the end of the week, Lila had my affidavit typed and printed, 23 pages that told the story like a ledger and also like a mother who knows exactly what she lost and what she refuses to lose again. We filed for a restraining order and got it, temporary, then permanent after a hearing that felt like a sad play. APS opened a case and visited, sat in my kitchen and drank my bad coffee and asked me to tell the story in 3 different ways. "Your clarity helps," the caseworker said, "especially with the concussion." "My clarity is the only thing I trust," I said. The plan grew new teeth. Lila pulled the U-Haul contract from the evidence box and smiled with her mouth tight. "He signed with his own name," she said, "and he signed for your credit card. We'll subpoena U-Haul for footage from the desk camera. We'll subpoena Facebook for the IP address of the estate sale posts. We'll get the gas station CCTV from the morning. These little videos are modern miracles." "Miracles are good," I said. "I prefer procedures." We scheduled a walkthrough with a woman from my insurance company, mostly to prove what had been moved and what had not. I'd been stupidly practical for decades. Photographs of every room for policy renewal, serial numbers, recent appraisals of the 1 or 2 good things. It felt churchy, the way paperwork can feel like 1,000 tiny candles you lit for yourself in advance. The adjuster praised my lists and then took more photographs and circled her yeses. I called the buyers who had left messages asking when they could pick up their new treasures and told them to report their contact with Kira to the sheriff. A few were defensive. People do not like to admit their deals were stolen, but most were kind, embarrassed, mad on my behalf. Kira, for her part, messaged me twice. The first was unwise and read like a teenager's diary. "You're overreacting. He told me you said it was okay. You're making him look bad to your church people. Stop." The second was calmer, coached by someone who thought they knew the law. "Please refrain from defamation. I have screenshots that you agreed to the sale." She did not. What she had was audacity and a ring light. Lila told me to block her. I didn't, not immediately. Instead, I screenshotted everything and uploaded it to a folder labeled Wolves. Then came the hearing. The courtroom smelled like disinfectant and winter coats. Evan shuffled in with his hands in front of him like he still expected them to be held. He looked thinner, older, like the inside of him had started to cave in. He scanned the room, saw me, and something, I can't give you the word, it would be a lie to name it,
flickered, and died on his face. Kira wasn't there. She'd opted out of the non-glamorous part of crime. The judge was a woman with hair pulled back so tight I could hear the snap. She listened. Lila was polite murder. She presented the ranger's body cam footage of me the day I stumbled out of the woods, which I watched with the dissociated interest of someone watching an actress they didn't particularly enjoy. Then she showed the Facebook posts, the U-Haul contract, the gas station clip of Evan buying Gatorade with my card at 8:12 a.m., the time-stamped bank withdrawals, the messages to buyers, the blank POA with the sticky flag. Finally, she handed up the photo of my head, day 1, day 2, day 3. There isn't anything like seeing your own body in evidence. It makes the soul remember its job. Evan's public defender tried. He talked about misunderstanding and family and how I was perhaps struggling with memory, might have been confused, might have said yes and then forgotten. Lila waited until he was done and then handed the judge the affidavit from the ER with the line underlined that said, "Patient alert and oriented ×3, no deficits noted." The judge signed the restraining order like she was clocking out. No contact, no third-party contact, no proximity within 1,000 feet of her residence or person, surrender any keys, surrender any firearms. The words stacked like stones I could stand on.
Meanwhile, APS did what APS does. They conducted a home safety assessment and then, delicately, asked if I had anyone I trusted to stay with me while I healed. I did. Martha, who lives across the street and knows how long it takes me to walk to the mailbox and would send me a text if it took too long. She came over with soup and those sugar cookies that taste like childhood holidays. We moved the cedar chest back to its spot and sat on it. Two old girls wiser than our hair color. "You always said he had a way of making his crisis your problem," she said. "He learned young," I said, "and I taught him well." "You did the best you could." "I did the best I did," I said, which is not the same. There was still the matter of the house deed. Fraudulets are wonderful, but they're not force fields. Leela sent letters to 4 title companies, alerting them that any attempt to record a transfer from me would be contested. She also notified the county recorder's office that any documents purporting to bear my signature needed verification. 2 days later, the recorder called. "Someone attempted a quitclaim deed online," she said. "It got flagged by the system because the notarization was off." I don't know if you've ever been grateful to an algorithm, but I brought the county clerk's office a dozen donuts and a thank you card with my best cursive just the same. The detective assigned to the case, Detective Paulson, who looked like he'd been born in a tie, came by and sat in my living room. He asked me to tell the story. Again, the telling was both medicine and re-trauma. It collected the fragments and then shook them. He wrote in a little notebook even though I could see his phone recording audio in the corner. "We have the car GPS from his truck," he said. "You went out this road." He showed me a map, and he turned around here at the trailhead. 30 minutes later, he was at your house. 30 minutes, I repeated. It was helpful to have a number, like pain on a 1 to 10 scale. I could hold it. "What's the charge for leaving someone in the woods?" I asked plainly. He looked at me with a thoughtful kindness. "We're looking at criminal mistreatment due to your age and the concussion," he said. "Potentially attempted coercion with the POA. It depends on what the DA wants to file, but the felony theft is the clean one. Also, identity theft, using your card and name to initiate contracts." "What kind of time is that?" I asked. Not because I love prison, but because I love consequences, like a gardener loves fences. "First-time felony theft? That varies," he said. "But with the aggravating factor of elder abuse, it's not nothing." Evan called me once, before the supervised contact restrictions took effect. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that started with "Ma" and ended with "You're overreacting," and was mostly a list of rationalizations in between. I saved it and uploaded it to Wolves. Kira didn't message again after Leela sent her a courtesy copy of the restraining order with a note, "Any contact with my client regarding these matters will be considered harassment and will be added to evidence." Kira did, however, post a series of vague stories.
Some people are so ungrateful. Family is the worst. Don't trust anyone over 40. And I did, however, screenshot them. Not because I needed them for court, because I will always be a petty archivist. And I accept this about myself. Maybe you're reading this thinking, this is all very clinical for revenge. Where's the satisfying sting? Where's the public humiliation? Where's the cathartic twist? You don't understand. This was my catharsis, turning the world into paper and letting the paper do the work. Women like me have spent our lives documenting other people's messes. This time, the file had my name on the tab. I would not screw that up with theatrics. But I am not above a little theater. A week after Evan's arrest, he'd made bail thanks to a friend who had more optimism than sense. He was out under conditions. He could not contact me. He could not come within 1,000 feet. He could not handle my stuff. Predictably, he handled my stuff. On a Wednesday, my driveway camera pinged me while I was at physical therapy learning gentle neck stretches. The footage showed Evan, hoodie pulled up, walking up my driveway like a running back, and then stopping at the gate, swearing, turning and leaving. He had forgotten the new camera on the gate. Or perhaps he wanted me to know he still existed. Either way, it was recorded and emailed before his sneakers hit the road. I forwarded it to Detective Paulson with the subject line, "Your runner continues to train."
Paulson filed a violation. The judge didn't like that. Neither did Evan's bondsman, who called the number on my caller ID blocked, private caller, and asked if I thought Evan was a flight risk. "I think he's a poor decision risk," I said. The bondsman grunted. "We'll be having a chat," he said, and I could hear the predatory pragmatism of money. It comforted me in the gross way only capitalism can. I fixed the little wrongs that make a house unlivable. I put my dishes back in the cabinet where my hands know them. I took my quilts out of the box and aired them in the sun, even though it was February cold, because everything we own deserves to breathe, if we do. I replaced the cheap sage candle Kara had left burning. My house is not a spa. It's a working woman's dwelling, and I brought back the smell of the lemon oil I'm loyal to like a nun. I left Evan's childhood room exactly as it was, not out of sentiment, because ruins have their uses. We set a trial date. That is when a different kind of planning started, the plan that made my stomach twist like a schoolgirl about to stage a play. I did not need to because the state would do it. I wanted to because a lifetime of reps told me you didn't leave your own defense to chance. Lila prepared me. We practiced answers that could not be pulled apart by a public defender's fingers. We practiced not rising to bait. We practiced the truth in simple sentences that fit on single lines. In the middle of all this, a woman from Kara's past messaged me from a burner account. "You don't know me. You should know she helped her ex lift tools from his mother's garage and sell them at the swap meet. Careful." I did not respond. I put it in wolves. Some days my life felt like I was running an archive for a museum no one sane would visit. And then came one more twist, because of course life insisted. The recorder's office called again. "We flagged someone trying to notarize a document with your name at Cartridge World over on 3rd Street, the clerk said, "and we thought you'd want to know." Cartridge World, the place with the weird dolphin mural and the sad office chairs. I thanked her, called Paulson, and he did what detectives do. He checked the store's CCTV. The footage showed Kira at the counter with a messy stack of papers, the POA again, sloppily filled, then a handwritten letter with my name on top in purple gel pen like a teenage note, and a notary stamping her foot because she didn't have proper ID to sign for me. "You're not her," the notary had said, and bless that pedant, she had refused. With all the messy pieces collected, the pile of bad choices looked like a bonfire someone else had built, and I was finally allowed to watch burn from a safe distance. The morning of trial, I put on the suit I wore to my niece's graduation. Navy, fine wool, doesn't make me itch. I wore the pearl studs my mother left me, and the sensible shoes I've had resoled twice because I trust them. My hair did what it always does, whatever it wanted. I looked like myself, which was important. I was there to be not a fantasy of a victim or a villain, but a woman with a grocery list and some fight. Evan took the stand. He told a story that had a lot of me agreeing and theoretical to things like, selling some stuff and moving to a place where people could help. He talked about my confusion and decline. He used the phrase, "It's just hard to watch your mom struggle." And if sarcasm could be lethal, we could have kept the lights on in the courthouse with what I generated. Lila asked him how long it takes to drive from the trailhead where they found me to my house. He said, "I don't know." She said 30 minutes. She let the number hang like humidity. Then she asked why my bank alerts showed cash withdrawals that morning. He said, "Groceries." "At a gas station?" Lila asked, smiling faintly. He said, "Snacks." "And the U-Haul?" He said. "I was helping." "With what?" "Moving my mom to a place with more support," he said. "Which place?" He stared. "Name the facility," she said. "You must have shopped them." Silence. A man who's never made a spreadsheet in his life will always give himself away when asked for details. The judge's eyebrows did a thing I planned to draw and frame. They played the Ranger cam footage. They played the gas station clip. They played the U-Haul clerk, a woman with an orange manicure who did not want to be there but who testified clearly that Evan had presented my credit card and told her, proud as a peacock, that he was doing all the work because his mom couldn't handle it. Then Leela called me. I walked up like I was walking into the school auditorium to hand a microphone to a 6th grader. I told the truth plain. I said I had a concussion, but not the kind that erases decades. I said my son had asked me to get in the truck. I said I remembered the pain and the broken phone and the woods. I said I do not confuse giving my child a dresser with moving my entire life without my consent. I said no, I did not sign a POA. I said yes, I have always kept my paperwork tidy. I said no, I did not plan to go quietly into assisted living, at least not while I can still carry a laundry basket. The jury looked at me like what I was, someone's neighbor. The part of me that still likes people relaxed a fraction. The part of me that learned not to trust anyone who says, "Trust me," stayed alert. In closing, the DA used boring words. Wonderful, deadly, boring words. Elements, intent, evidence, pattern. My favorite for its cold elegance, he wanted the authority of her consent without the inconvenience of asking for it. They came back fast. Guilty on theft in the 1st degree, guilty on identity theft, guilty on attempted coercion, guilty on criminal mistreatment. I watched the sheriffs take him, once again, by the wrists I had held once in grocery store lines and elementary school parking lots. He looked back at me, and for a hot minute I felt the tug of the original story, the one where love saves everything. I am still stubborn enough to mourn that story's loss. Then I stood. My knees made that little sound they make, like a door opening. I walked out. Sentencing would come later, a whole separate ritual with its own agonies. Meanwhile, there were practicalities. The judge ordered restitution. The DA agreed to push for community service with organizations assisting older folks whose families had gutted them. Poetic, but I didn't care about the poetry. I cared about the garden fence I'd been installing, one picket at a time. I changed my will. I removed Evan's name from every benevolent future I'd imagined. I set up a small trust for scholarships for kids aging out of foster care who wanted job training, because there are children who take rescue and turn it into a scaffolding instead of a ladder to trouble. I informed my church that meals I used to bring Evan during his bad months would now go to a woman down the road whose son had left her with a trailer and a broken axle. I got used to walking by the cedar chest and knowing it was mine. I watched the bruise on my head fade from eggplant to green to a yellow that matched the Post-it flag in the evidence bag that had pointed to my almost signature. In bed, I practiced the memory trick the therapist recommended. Small things. The color of my bath towel, blue. The number of cans of chickpeas in my pantry, 6. The name of the other ranger who brought me the first aid kit, Miguel. The name of the nurse with the spreadsheet brother, Sharon. Knowing little truths made the big truth less lonely. On the phone with Jess one night, yes, she called because sometimes rescuers stay a little. She said, "Are you sleeping?" I said, "Like a cat in a new house." She said, "That is not real sleep." I said, "It's what I've got." She made me promise to call if I saw any more drive-by violations. I did.
People keep their promises to rangers, I've learned. It might be the hats. Or the sense that if the forest can take you back in a breath, you don't play chicken with its guardians. When sentencing day arrived, I went because closures are for picture frames in court calendars, not hearts. But you still show up. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Word gets around in a town that's more Costco than couture. Kira didn't come. She did, I later heard, move 3 towns over and attempt a yoga teacher certification that did not stick. Good, not my business. My business was the man in the suit I bought him for his first job interview, now sitting like it itched. The judge talked about accountability like it was a bird she was trying to balance on her hand. She considered the mitigating factors, his age, his claimed intentions, the fact that he had not physically assaulted me beyond the abandonment and the shove that led to the bump, which, yes, sounds like weasel language to me too. She considered the aggravating factors, my age, the caretaker role I had played in his life, the planning, the exploitation of trust. In the end, she sentenced him to time in county, a term on supervised probation, mandatory counseling, community service hours, restitution, and a 5-year no-contact order. He didn't look at me leaving court. That was merciful. I don't know if I would have looked back. There's a way to make a wound permanent and a way to let it scar. I'm too practical for permanent open wounds. I have work to do.
After, in the parking lot, I saw the woman from church who had bought the lie. She was by her minivan, hands tucked in sleeves, eyes wet. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know. I wanted to get ahead of it, to be helpful. I'm an idiot." "You're a person," I said. "We are not always smart. I should have called you." "You should have," I agreed. "Consider me called now. Come by for coffee next week. Bring that lemon cake you do." She nodded, relief like a third person between us. That is revenge too, sometimes, to make community smarter, to teach the town not to be easy marks for sob stories that lead to someone else's couch being hauled down the drive. It has been months. The forest has moved on, and so have I, in a dozen small ways. I installed a solar light by the side gate. I put a deadbolt on the garage door. I keep my phone zipped into a pocket like a talisman. I carry a small pebble just picked up on the trail where she found me, smooth on one side, rough on the other, and I rub it when I feel unsteady, to remind myself that wild places will spit you out if you ask nicely and keep walking. I have a good therapist who hands me tissues and homework and says, "You did the hard thing. You did the boring, hard thing, and it saved you." Sometimes I miss the boy who used to fall asleep in the back seat after baseball. He always did. Like his body knew how to trust my driving even when his spirit stayed alert. Sometimes I remember the first time he lied about something small, a pencil he claimed he didn't take, the way his eyes stuttered away, and how I told myself it was normal because children experiment. Sometimes I get mad at the versions of me that made excuses. Then I make myself a sandwich and pay my property taxes and vacuum under the couch and change the water filters on time. And for a minute, the world is fine again. People ask if I regret adopting. This is not a question you ask a woman in a line at Costco. And yet there I am, comparing soup prices, listening to someone wonder if I regret the central act of my life. I do not. Regret implies a power I never had. I had choices, and I made them with the information I had and the heart I had access to at the time. If you offer love and someone uses it like a ladder to climb onto your roof and try to change the locks on your house, that is about them, not about whether ladder should exist. Here is the revenge, in case you missed it on all the file folders and court dates. My house is still my house. My name is still on my door. My couch is where I like it again. My cedar chest is heavy and mine. The boy-turned-man who left me in the woods for dead is spending his Saturdays cleaning up parks and his Tuesdays in therapy paid for by a system he tried to outsmart. His name, when you search the county records, draws up a docket of sentences and terms. My name brings up a deed with a fraud alert that makes clerks grin. In my will, in clean ink, there is no space for him to inherit the things he once tried to take with packing tape and entitlement. If that sounds cold, you haven't listened. I am not cold. I am precise. There is a difference.
And after everything, precision is how I worship what saved me, the unglamorous, perfectly legal machinery of a society built by people who didn't want their sons to sell their china without permission. I take my morning walks now at the park by the river, not in the woods. I like trails where I can see people coming and wave before they reach me. I wave a lot. Older women wave back like we're all in on a joke. Maybe we are. Maybe the joke is that we were always told to be nice, and now we have learned to be decent instead, which sometimes looks like changing the locks and showing up to court with a stack of paper so thick it could stop a bullet. Some nights when the swallow clock sounds particularly smug, I lie there and inventory my life. The smell of lemon oil, the hum of the freezer, the quiet of a house that is mine. And then I sleep. Less like a cat, more like a person whose fencing is in and gates are shut and latched. The world is still what it is, messy and inconsistent and full of hunger, but the door is solid, the hinges oiled, and if I count, I can list all the people who would come if I called. Here's the final thing I'll say, because it matters. Love is not permission. Love is an invitation with rules. I loved a boy who became a man who decided the rules didn't apply. The consequence for that choice is that he lost access to me and my home and my good couch and my decent coffee and my corny jokes and my lists and my in case of emergency duct tape. He lost access to being the man I would have bragged about at the deli. He chose it. The handcuffs were just punctuation.
And me? I gained a stack of paper, a map out, a spine made of something other than guilt. I gained my life back, one laminated printout at a time.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye!